He might have a tendency or proclivity towards the female babysitter, but I think he's going to kill whoever's in his life.
Who doesn't?
So this is... Come on now, Ray.
From Rosemary's Baby and Reagan McNeil to Jason, Freddy, and Chucky to Samara, Jigsaw, and Pennywise, we can't get enough. If it's blood-curdling, spine-tingling, breath-quickening, or soul-stealing, we are ready to watch it. Welcome to Hilltop Horror Movie Reviews. I'm your host, Ray Richards. With me tonight are my two co-hosts, Ann Conley.
Hey there, I'm Annie Get Your Gun today because you're going to need it for this review.
And Helen Stewart.
Hello.
All right, so tonight we are reviewing the 2018 American slasher film Halloween, directed by David Gordon Green and written by Green, Jeff Fradley, and Danny McBride. It's the 11th installment in the Halloween film series and a direct sequel to the 1978 film of the same name, while effecting a retcon of all previous sequels. The plot follows a post-traumatic Laurie Strode who prepares to face Michael Myers in a final showdown on Halloween night. Jamie Lee Curtis and Nick Castle reprise their roles as Strode and Myers, respectively, with stuntman James Jude Courtney also portraying Myers. So usually when we start off, we talk about what our expectations were going in to see the movie. We had previously reviewed the 1978 original Halloween in preparation for seeing and reviewing this movie. So Helen, as our resident expert on Halloween, what were your expectations?
So we all know Halloween, the original, is my favorite movie. So I was really excited to watch this. We ended up having a date night. No kids. Podcasters going out together. It was great.
Woohoo!
I was really looking forward to seeing how Michael Myers and Laurie Strode have evolved over the 40 years since the original had come out. So I was definitely anticipating that whole showdown.
Awesome. I was super excited as well. And let me tell you, to anybody who's listening to this, if this is still in the theaters, spend a night, the first night, and watch the original Halloween. Crank out, get your Amazon subscription up, whatever, do a 24-hour rental, watch the first one over again, then get your patootie to the movie theater because this was great. I loved it, but I loved it even more having just watched the first one and seeing the direct parallels throughout the movie. Brilliant.
I agree with all of that. Yeah, definitely see the first movie if you have not seen the first movie in a while, or if you haven't seen it at all, obviously. My expectation going in, I felt like we were going to get more of the same from the 1978 movie. And in my opinion, we did get a lot of that. I'm not positive or negative in my opinion, just the way they structured the movie. And as a little side note, as far as the date night, that would not be me and both ladies on a date. That was respective dates.
Spouses.
Yes.
Not that you would have minded, Ray.
That's true. That's true. So, Ann, why don't we roll the trailer for Halloween 2018?
Happy to, Ray. All right, it's trailer time and action.
I've waited for him.
Testing 1, 2, 3. We're on.
We're here to investigate a patient that killed 3 innocent teenagers on a Halloween in 1978. He was shot by his own psychiatrist and taken into custody that night. And has spent the last 40 years in captivity. Hello, Michael. I have something you might like to see.
Everyone in my family, turns into a nutcase this time of year. Yeah, I mean, your grandmother is Laurie Strode. She was almost murdered.
Wasn't it her brother who murdered all those babysitters?
No, it was not her brother. That's something that people made up.
Do you know that I pray every night that he would escape?
What the hell did you do that for?
So I can kill him.
Dad, look out!
The bus crashed.
Mom, what bus crash?
Michael escaped.
Excuse me, somebody's in here.
Hello?
He's waited for this night. He's waited for me. I've waited for him.
Get out! Go on! Get inside!
You don't believe in the boogeyman?
He's here! Michael!
You should.
Can you close the closet door?
In October 2018, 40 years after the massacre in Haddonfield, true crime podcasters Aaron Corey and Dana Haynes traveled to Smiths Grove Rehabilitation Hospital to visit Michael Myers, curious to talk to him to gain some insight into his psychology before his transfer to a new facility, to no effect. They interview Dr. Ranbir Sartain, a former student of Dr. Samuel Loomis and Michael's new psychiatrist. Aaron and Dana then arrive unannounced at Laurie Strode's heavily armored and guarded home to an unsuccessful interview. Laurie suffers from PTSD and has her life dwindled to isolation after 2 failed marriages and a turn to alcoholism. Laurie has spent the last 40 years preparing for Michael's return. Michael's transport crashes and he kills the security guards and a father and his young son checking on the inmates before escaping. The following day on Halloween, Michael murders Aaron, Dana, and a mechanic for his clothes and a clerk at a gas station and recovers his mask before returning to Haddonfield. Laurie attempts to warn Karen of Michael's getaway, but she dismisses her concerns. Okay, Helen, you want to start us off?
So I just felt the scene where they're in the rehabilitation hospital was so... You expected something to happen, and then it kind of escalated and then just dwindled. I enjoyed, so the Aaron walks up to every patient is outlined with this yellow box, and they say, do not cross the line. And he walks up, and his toe is like right on that line, and he's holding up the mask, and you would assume his arms are into the box.
Yes.
And I'm just like, oh, Michael Myers is just going to turn around and just like snap your head, and nothing happens. The patients start to go a little erratic and they barking and it just gets a little chaotic. But other than that, nothing happened in that scene. So you just assume Michael's just not doing anything there.
Yeah, I kind of wondered during that scene whether or not it was because he was a man. Because there's in this movie, one of the interesting things to me is the psychology about why he kills or who he kills in the movie. And I thought, yeah, his arm is definitely over the line with the mask. And I thought he's going to go for the mask or something. And then when he didn't, I was kind of like, maybe it's because he's a guy.
So I love the whole setup of that scene as we talk about them walking into this inmate yard. I'm actually really glad I did not see that full trailer, which we just previewed, because I feel like that really gives away most of the good scenes in the movie. You know, great for our podcast here today to be able to refresh and to talk about them. But I thought what was so great about that scene is, well, first of all, let's talk about the podcasters and how very clearly they're meant to mimic the serial series podcasters. Yeah. I thought that was funny, so on the nose, but like so savvy, right? So time appropriate. I just thought that was great. Like a little throwback, you know, we're podcasters, we're investigative journalists, like again, right? Trying to not really accept it as a modern day profession as actually being quote unquote podcasters. But, you know, they get to this yard and I love that it was set up like a checkerboard or like a chessboard. And I thought that was genius. It was weird and it was off-putting. And then the idea that it was like they were setting up a chess game before the movie even began. I love that. I thought the imagery there was fantastic. I don't know if asylums like that actually exist or not, but the imagery was striking. And then to both of your point, just the idea that, you know, they have all of the inmates in the entire area start going berserk once he pulls out this mask, pretty much except for Michael, excuse me. And the other thing that they played along with here were camera angles, so you're not seeing his face.
Yes, the only thing I think you saw was the corner of his eye that you could see that he was blinded in the eye that she stuck him with the hanger in the 1978 movie. Yeah, the interesting thing about the asylum, not the asylum, but the rehabilitation center is the sort of halfway mark it plays between what the typical horror asylum is, which is like completely unrealistic, right? In the modern time, you wouldn't have a place that looked like what they usually look like in The Ring, for example, with the asylum. It's like pretty dingy, pretty nasty. And then you go to other movies where it's completely unsanitary. And then what's probably more realistic, which is like you say, there's no checkerboard looking, you don't have a place where they can be outside. They're not chained to huge, pylons that are on the ground, type of idea. So this was a good, I think, halfway mark between those two.
Then you meet the other Dr. Loomis, who I swore, I was like, is that supposed to be Dr. Loomis? And then he's not Dr. Loomis. He's the student of Dr. Loomis, Dr. Sartain. But I swear they had the same accent.
Yeah, very
I was
very
like, are they
similar.
from the same country? Like, how did this happen?
Transylvania, apparently.
Yeah, it was interesting that they chose an actor who mimicked Loomis in a lot of ways. And of course, Laurie Strode in the movie even sort of says, "Oh, you're the new Loomis." So
Loomis 2.0, for sure.
yes, or 0.5, since he's a retrograde version of Loomis, really, kind of.
I know, I missed our original Dr. Loomis, I have to say. Even though we joked about his character and kind of playing with this, like, he's almost more a better father figure.
Right. He was going to protect people.
Right. Then,
even
like,
though he was terrible at talking.
creepy scientist. Yeah, not quite the character that he needed to be as an actor, but I did like him as an actor. And this guy was like the Einstein of doctors. He's got the crazy frazzled hair, and you're like, am I supposed to take this guy seriously? I didn't know how to read him at first.
Yeah, I thought very early on if you're paying attention, I mean, they tell that he's not right, that he's essentially a bad guy, right? I mean, you can see his need to understand Michael Myers in a way that's not
Healthy,
yeah. Whereas Loomis was much more like around trying to make sure Michael didn't escape once he realized that he couldn't understand him. This guy was like, I need to understand what he's about.
He was fascinated with getting into his psyche, which obviously winds up being his downfall.
Which, of course, is a stand-in for the audience who wants to understand why Michael Myers does what Michael Myers does, right?
So I had a big question for you, Ray, as well as we start to move through this movie and sort of these intro scenes. Were you excited to see the leaves and the pumpkins?
I was so excited for Haddonfield 2018. It did not look like California. It actually looked like a place that would be in the Midwest. There were a lot of leaves. There were a lot of pumpkins, real pumpkins, round pumpkins. Even jack-o'-lanterns, which was awesome. Unfortunately, it didn't look a ton like the actual, from the 1978 town. So I'm assuming it's in a different location, different neighborhood, whatever. It almost seemed like an older neighborhood than what you saw in 78, which kind of seemed like in 78, a modern sort of upscale neighborhood.
Yeah, I agree that there was a change in that kind of setting where the houses in the original were further set apart. There was less trick-or-treaters during that day. So you kind of got like it was more of a quiet, serene feel to the town. And then in this movie, it was the houses were closer together. There was tons of trick-or-treaters outside. There was a lot more chaos. It seemed more urban also. Like there was more diversity in the characters that we saw.
I believe that Serenity is actually no money in the budget for extras in 78.
I mean, it was a very small budget.
Aren't you supposed to be able to recruit like free extras off of the street and just stick them in there?
Not when you're probably filming with no permit and you're just trying to get the shots and leave.
I agree, but you know what? To me, it worked for me. It was just a different neighborhood. Land plots get smaller, as we know. It's sort of older neighborhoods that still have those acre-plus lots, right? And modern day, it's townhomes or side-by-side, where literally you can practically reach out and touch the house from one another. So to me, it was fine, like that it was still in Haddonfield, just, yes, a very different neighborhood. That worked for me.
Yeah, I thought it was more of like just a change and with the changing times that more people might have been moving there because the school district might have been great. Who knows?
It was intense, though, I will say, that Halloween scene where all the kids are out. And it is like, man, I hope there's not a single car driving down that street because kids are everywhere.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Aaron and Dana in the scene where they're killed. Although I have a question as to whether Aaron actually is killed. Maybe I missed it, but I just remember Michael beating him against the bathroom door and throwing him up against the corner, and he watches as Michael kills Dana very intimately, right? Like holding her up and like strangling her, breaking her neck or whatever he does. And once again, to me, that was like, maybe Michael isn't interested in killing men all that much. He kills them out of convenience because he needs the clothes for the mechanic, and maybe he kills the other guy because he saw him or would have seen him, and he needs to get into the bathroom to get the girl, but he's really about getting the girl.
Man, you totally stole everything I was going to say with your preamble.
I apologize.
So I agree. You know, we were talking a little bit of this, like, what are Michael's motivations to kill kind of throughout this movie? And, you know, is he really just going after the female figures? So I thought one of the things that we really hit on that I thought was insightful and made a lot of sense with the first one was that he sort of has this infatuation with his sister. And it's this whole idea of like sinning and vices and sexuality. And he's targeting women, and specifically women who have been promiscuous. And he's, you know, angry at his sister, and he's sort of right with the Judith Myers tombstone and that whole sort of psychological infatuation. So I was kind of prepared to really see him, you know, live it up in this one. And then you see him go after the gas station, the mechanic, which in hindsight, then you're like, oh, he's got to get his jumpsuit. Okay, because apparently Michael Myers is a fashionista. He knows what good branding is, and he needs to get another jumpsuit for the look. And then he, you know, sort of conveniently kills, right to Ray's point, like the supervisor kind of guy, which seems a little like, did you really need to kill him? Because I think the other guy, you see flashes of white in the background, if you guys notice, right, when they're talking to that guy. So you're kind of like, what's happening in the background?
I think from the story point of view, he had to be dead, otherwise Aaron would have got him involved, right? Like
the dude in the pit stop shop?
The guy in the booth. Like, the guy in the booth also had to be dead so that Aaron and Dana were in the bathroom alone, other than saying, like, oh, call the cops, whatever, you know.
I mean, I would argue, I don't know. I kind of felt like it was one of those convenient. They wanted to show the graphic image of his jaw being dislocated. I thought that was one of the more graphic deaths and visualizations in the entire movie, quite honestly. But I don't know. You kind of just, to your point, Ray, like it's a casual killing. It's like they're there and they're going to be a nuisance, so we're just getting him out of the way because I've got to get my jumpsuit. And then he's going after the girl. I mean, somehow he's like, I got to get this girl, tracks her down to the bathroom, and it seems very intentional. And then poor Aaron comes in to try to like defend her honor and gets the crap eaten out of him and pretty much left for dead, right?
Yeah, I don't know if in the scene after that where the cops are there, if you see them taking his body out or not. I know they take a body out, but I didn't catch whether that was his, hers, or two bodies or what.
So I have a little bit of a fun fact here that may explain a little bit as to Michael Myers' method.
Oh.
So when James Jude Courtney was practicing for this role, he took inspiration from two sources. One was from a hitman whom he lived with for a period of time because he wanted his autobiography written.
Interesting.
Yes, I also find that pretty interesting. So he described how to kill, and he emphasized stealth and efficiency. So you can see that a lot throughout Michael Myers' killings. He's not going for usually the long, drawn-out kill. He's going for, I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to admire my handiwork, and then I'm going to go off. The other was the inspiration from cats, wild cats. Because anything that's in their way, they
I
get
thought
rid
you
of
meant
it.
the Broadway play there for a second.
I 100% thought you meant the musical.
Mr. Mistopheles is his inspiration.
Which is equally as terrifying. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I actually thought it was going to be way more terrifying.
So
okay, wait, wildcats.
Yes, like leopards and cheetahs. Whatever is in their way, they are going to murder.
Are very stealthy,
Yes.
sort of the in the night sneaky. Yeah, for sure.
And his hair and the mask does look very lion mane-ish.
So I feel like he's killing whomever, regardless. He might have a tendency or proclivity towards the female babysitter, but I think he's going to kill whoever's in his way.
Who doesn't?
So this is, come on now, Ray. So this is what I thought was interesting too about that whole scene at the gas station though, because then he goes to the car and he gets the mask, right? So it's kind of like he's targeting, obviously, not kind of, he's clearly targeting these guys because they have the mask. He wants to get that mask back. But if you were really sort of switching that lens to saying he was doing a practical killing to get the mask back, he'd be going after the dude who was dangling it over the line, right? He'd be attacking that guy for manhandling the mask. The chick was just hanging out in the back recording. Give her a break. But obviously he was very clearly predominantly targeting that female. So to me, it was very mixed signals about what he was trying to accomplish.
Yeah, do we know, I was trying to track it, but I don't remember. Do we know where the keys to the car were? Did the man have the keys? Did she have the keys, and that's why he follows her into the bathroom? I couldn't figure all of that out, or was it ambiguous?
I don't know, but I was just laughing really hard because I know we had that great conversation imagining basically a skit with Michael Myers trying to figure out how a modern day trunk
Yeah.
works.
Yes.
So we had this discussion, right? He's been in an insane asylum, quote
40
unquote,
years.
recovery center, rehabilitation hospital, right, for 40 years. The mechanics of how trunks work today didn't exist back then. It was only the key. And so I was like, oh, please, SNL, like do a skit on Michael Myers going to the front, like looking for the button, like toggling, and then you hit the gas tank, and then he goes back and he's like, oh, that's not it. Closes the gas tank, goes back up, is trying to find the buttons, goes back to the trunk, goes back to the front. I mean, you could just see him like trying to figure out how to open this stupid trunk to get the mask out. And obviously they just kind of glance over that in the movie, but great comical element that could have been.
Yes, I agree. So he kills the woman, the man may be dead, gets his mask back, and heads back to Haddonfield.
I want to point out how he does this unbelievably, like, I'm going to terrify the crap out of this girl by just kind of chucking, I don't even want to say chucking, but dribbling the teeth of whomever over the, over the side of the stall. Like, you're going to be next. I'm just going to terrify you with these teeth.
And actually, that's one of the few times you see him do anything that's...
Right, he doesn't toy with people.
Yeah, he doesn't really toy. I mean, I almost felt like it was out of character for him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? The other thing I want to say is, did either of you feel that before he got the mask, which I guess the only kill we really see is in that bathroom, he seems so huge and like you see his big boots and everything. But then when he puts the mask back on and you see him in Haddonfield like a couple scenes later, and the shot is like reminiscent of the 78 shot over his shoulder, he seems so much thinner and lighter. He doesn't seem as big.
So if you look at the two actors, James Jude Courtney is significantly taller than Nick Castle. And they use Nick Castle in that first scene when he's in the window and Laurie Strode shoots at him, and she actually shoots the mirror. So their builds are definitely significantly different.
Interesting. So which actor, do you know which actor it is that's at the rehabilitation center that you see?
That's Courtney. He's the bigger guy.
Oh, interesting.
One of the scenes I wanted to quickly talk about was the bus crash, so the escape attempt, if you will. And I mean, of course, you knew this was inevitable. They're building the tension throughout the whole opening scene. Laurie Strode kind of freaking out. We see her in her place being, a recluse, apparently, strained relationships with her family because of this PTSD. And then fast forward to, big surprise. On Halloween Eve, the bus crashes and Michael Myers escapes. But I thought one of the, I don't know if you would even say intense or horrible scenes of this movie was right here in the get-go where you have the father and the son who are going on a hunting trip, which, first of all, let's just talk about the whole framing of that situation. I felt like that dad looked way too old to be that child's father. I thought it was grandfather. And then he's like, Dad. And I was like, okay, well, that's weird. And then this whole subplot, or like this as an aside, that he wanted to be a dancer and he didn't want to go hunting. I'm like, why are we trying to have like modern day commentary on, like homosexuality as we're going through a murder movie?
Yeah, I pinned it not so much on homosexuality, but more on just masculinity.
Yeah, either way, it seemed really forced.
No, yeah, I don't know why it was in there, really, to be honest with you, but I guess they had to talk about something.
I just want to dance, Dad. So, okay, but then, of course, the horror comes when they stumble upon the bus and, the dad does the inevitable, i.e., I'll be right back, and goes out and checks out on the inmates. Of course, the poor kid is there all alone. He goes out to search for them. Spoiler alert, the kid is murdered. And I just was like, are they going to go there? And they totally did.
Yes, they did. I do want to touch on how the scene of the patients just kind of ambling along when the bus crashed was very reminiscent of the scene when we have Michael Myers escape from the insane asylum the first time, where there's patients walking around in the rain.
Loved it. Total throwback.
I thought this was the movie telling the audience that the old rules of Michael Myers letting the innocent live and only the promiscuous die type of thing is out the window. He's a stone cold killer. He's going to kill whoever he has to do whatever he wants to do, whatever that is.
Horrible. That was just messed up. I don't know if they needed to go there, but I mean, it made a point, to your point.
Sure,
right?
It did. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't know.
And of course, we find out later in the movie, this whole thing was essentially set up by new Dr. Loomis, whatever his name is. I don't remember what
So that was what was so suspicious, right? And then they get back on the bus and, the doctor jumps out. He's okay. He survived. Not a scratch on him. Don't shoot. I actually kind of love that he got shot.
Yeah.
Don't shoot, bang.
Yeah. Obviously not part
Oops.
of his plan.
Yeah, oops. And I think it was you, Ray, who said right off the bat, like, he planned this whole thing. Right? Ray saw right through that, let's be clear.
I caught onto that pretty quickly. Yeah.
He was like, that's why he wanted to sit in the bus, and he planned this whole thing, and he probably got the bus to crash just so he could get Michael Myers back out there. And just as we're talking about, the sick doctor, he had said prior to this that Michael Myers was a killer that had never been observed, quote unquote, in the wild. So first of all, I thought that was great because it's giving the insight into this kind of sick doctor's perspective where you were clearly like, well, then I guess you want to see him in the wild, which is hence why we have this entire movie that we're about to watch. But also, as we talked about the first one, we talked about Michael Myers being like an animal. So I also thought that was a great mirror reference of the first one.
Later that night, Allison, Karen's daughter and Laurie's granddaughter, finds her boyfriend Cameron Elam cheating on her at a high school-sponsored Halloween dance and leaves the party with Cameron's friend Oscar. Meanwhile, Michael continues his killing spree in a Haddonfield suburb, murdering Allison's best friend Vicky, her boyfriend Dave, and several neighbors, but is forced to retreat when Laurie and Deputy Frank Hawkins, who arrested Michael in 1978, open fire on him. Laurie convinces Karen and her husband Ray to seek protection in her house. So what we didn't talk about earlier was really Laurie Strode and her family and that whole setup. So obviously Laurie has PTSD. She's been shut in for 40 years to a greater or lesser degree. And I mean, what do you think? Do you think that's realistic the way they portrayed that, Helen?
I do think that it was realistic. I think it was kind of sad that, her relationship with her daughter wasn't really panning out, but then she seemed to have a little bit closer of a relationship with her granddaughter, which was nice. I obviously never have gone through anything like that, so I don't know how you would react, but she was kind of like a two-sided almost, where she was overly prepared with this crazy house with all these trapdoors and guns, but then also terrified that it was going to happen.
It's funny because in the movie, they actually... I forget, it's the friend of the granddaughter who sort of is saying what some people in the audience, myself, would say, which is like, he's just one crazy guy. He was one crazy guy that killed some people one night, like 40 years ago. Like, we have crazy people all the time doing crazy things. Like, you got to get over it and move on. Which I think is their way of sort of addressing it and then sort of like, okay, let's move that away. Now it's Michael Myers. He's crazy and he's killing a lot of people. But I at least like the fact that they addressed that, as well as shooting down the theory that it's her brother,
Right.
of course.
Oh, yeah, that was the best. Again, the whole like, wasn't he her brother? And no, that was, again, like these throwbacks to the other movies and the references and was really well done. One of the other pieces that we're glossing over a little bit, I don't know why it's not really covered in the wiki, is Michael Myers' original killing spree as he's going house to house. Right, so he gets to Haddonfield, and he starts terrorizing all these houses back to back. So you see him approach that first house. It's, again, sort of like this mysterious... First of all, I don't know why we're now in this new neighborhood, and there are still carports. I guess that's a Haddonfield thing. Who knew? Carports are still the rage, even in new developments. So he goes through this area, goes into like an open shed, and he grabs the hammer, which you're kind of like, oh, what's happening here? Goes in and like bloodily beats this older woman, brutally over the kitchen table, and then grabs the knife, right, and moves on to the next house.
Yeah, this is where you and I slightly disagree, because I felt like he was going in that house to get a knife, and she just happened to be the person that he saw her and beat her to death. And your thought, Anne, was that he was in there to beat her to death, and he just, oh, there's a knife too, and I'll take the knife.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a weapon upgrade. Oh, right? Whoa, upgrade. I want the knife. That's my killing object of choice. And you could assume that most houses have sort of that, right? What is it called? Is it a French knife?
I'm going to say butcher.
No, it's not butcher,
I
because those
know.
are the big square ones. I think it's a French knife. And so you could assume that. But at the same time, he went in there not knowing that she had the knife of his choice. So to me, it was kind of a convenient, moment, again, like weapon upgrade. He was going on a killing spree one way or another. He had a hammer, nothing was going to stop him. But either way, he brutally beats this woman. He grabs his knife, and then he basically moves on to the next house. The next scene, I was curious about your thoughts on, because I was a little confused with what was happening with the lady next door. So, these houses are 3 feet apart. This woman is randomly killed. There's supposedly, not that we see, there's nobody else in the house. Nobody else going around. Between the time that Michael Myers leaves that house and walks between the houses, this woman gets a phone call, and she is sort of alluding to the fact that she's being notified that somebody has been murdered, i.e. her neighbor.
Or something's going on.
Something's going on. Like, she's kind of implying, oh, that's horrible. Oh my God, I'll keep my eyes open. Da, da, da.
Yeah. And she's looking out the front window, and she's looking through the blinds and all that.
And you're like, there's absolutely no way anybody could have found that body and reported it and given you a call in that time frame. So that didn't make any sense to me. But I like the idea that she's looking out the front. I wish that they sort of did it differently. She could have even just been enjoying Halloween. I don't care what she was doing. But the idea that she's looking out the front, they wanted to build suspense, that she was like, I'll keep my eyes out for him. And then he comes through the back and then, of course, brutally murders her. So between the dislocated jaw and Michael Myers stabbing this woman through the throat, those were, the gruesome death scenes are starting to mount.
I have to say this was one of my favorite shots, because it was, as I had read about it, one single shot that they had to practice so much to get it right, because it was one shot. And it was almost to me like he was doing a Michael Myers version of trick-or-treating. Like, oh, I'm going to stop off here. Oh, I get a hammer. Oh, I'm going to stop off here. Oh, I get a knife. Oh, I'm going to also beat you to death with a hammer. And then I'm going to go find this other girl. And oh, now here's my other treat where I get to stab you through the throat. So I kind of thought that maybe with the phone call, it wasn't necessarily the lady next door, but maybe they were talking about the gas station. That there were murders nearby at this gas station. You might want to lock your doors.
I don't know, for whatever reason, in my mind, the gas station was further away. It might not have been even located. I mean, yeah, to me, it wasn't necessarily even in Haddonfield. So that's a good point, though. I didn't quite make that connection.
Yeah, so I kind of chalked it up after the fact to some editing process of the movie creating a gap there, because I didn't really understand what that was supposed to be. In fact, I thought it was the daughter, the grown daughter at first. I was like, oh, he's almost to her house, because I didn't really understand what he was doing at first either. Like, first, why did he decide to go back to Haddonfield if he's just murdering randomly? And then he gets to Haddonfield, gets out of his car, apparently on some random street, and just starts murdering people. The other thing I thought was interesting about that second killing is typically through the first movie, and correct me if I'm wrong, Helen, in the first movie, his kills he seems to watch his kills. It's not just he's just killing things and moving on. He has a purpose of some kind in the kill. Like he kills I forget what the boyfriend's name is, but stabs him and pins him to the wall and watches him, right? And all the women he kills, he does something with, right? And so he kills the first woman with the hammer. You don't really see what happens to her. But then he goes around to the next woman, walks around the back, walks in, and just stabs her through the throat and just leaves. Which seems, to me, again, sort of potentially out of character. I mean, we've never seen him, quote-unquote, in the wild, kind of away from sort of going after Laurie and her friends. But it seemed weird to me.
You're right. He's more of like an artist who does his murder, steps back, tries to admire his work, which is, I think, the part of the head tilt thing. So this iconic head tilt.
That's interesting, because I thought of him almost more like a scientist.
Oh.
Like he was sort of analyzing how these people were dying or how they reacted. But yeah, similar. I'm with you, girl.
Is this, I think in this section, is the most controversial part of the movie, which is the baby.
Right.
So the baby, controversial in the sense that most people think they shouldn't have included it because it shows him making a decision not to kill somebody who he's supposed to be sort of heartless. I didn't read it that way. I didn't read it like Michael Myers heard the baby, saw the baby, and decided, I'm not going to kill that poor little baby. I thought of it as him looking at the baby or acknowledging the baby's existence and saying, it's not worth me killing because it isn't something I would kill. Like, it's not even a thing for me to kill because I can't experience its dread, horror, or death. You know what I mean?
I might be getting a little religious here, but so if you think of like him being pure evil, and in some religions they say that the age of reason is 7, that baby wouldn't have been able to be killed because it wasn't able to be evil. So I feel like that's part of, like, you aren't able to make bad or wrong decisions like being promiscuous or doing the drinking and the alcohol, which is sort of what the rules were for the first one. So I kind of thought because it wasn't in competition or an evil being, that's why he wouldn't have
So the
killed
boy earlier died because he wanted to dance?
He was over 7.
I guess.
Voice of reason, or age of reason.
I appreciate where you're going with that one, Helen. Just about sort of, with the baby, kind of framing it that way. I didn't like the baby, for twofold. One was because certainly being a mother, you have that horrible dread that he's just murdered this boy, and now he's gonna, go on this crazy killing spree, and he's gonna murder a baby, and you're like, oh my God, would American movies really go that far? Now we're murdering babies? Is that? Oh, God. Like, all these things just kind of flash through your brain in about, like, 0.5 seconds. And then he goes by the baby, and then you're kind of like, but that doesn't make any sense either, because you are now pretty much on a senseless killing spree, and you're just actively choosing not. So I didn't like it either way. So, unfortunately, it just didn't do it for me.
So I had read that the reason this scene was even included was because they needed about 15 seconds of him moving through the space, and they wanted it to be more than him just walking. And so somebody came up with the idea of, put a baby in there. And so they did that. Of course, a lot of people don't like the scene because it shows he has shows he has a conscience, which I don't think. Like I said,
I wouldn't agree that it's a conscience. I wouldn't even say that he evaluated that decision like that. I think he would have just said, this is not something I kill and move on. Like, not because it's a baby, but because it's just not something that he would do.
I would agree with that.
I'm going to choose to ascribe to that next time that I watch this.
Okay.
I like that. Okay, so then this was the other piece that we got like a little disjointed on, because all of a sudden he's at the friend's house, right? And then, they've got the kid again, sort of like the random African-American kid that the friend is babysitting, and you're like, wait, but where did he come from and how far away is this house? So in the previous scene, they distinctively show him walking from one house to the next. And Ray and I were laughing afterwards because in this scene, you're like, when they don't show transitions in movies, you kind of have this assumption that they've traveled long distances or there's a bit of passage of time, right? You don't really know what that transition is. But what we were saying was in this movie, again, they sort of have that, token African-American family. Do you remember him coming out the front door and there's like the naughty nurse and the doctor getting in the car? And you're kind of like, why did they show that? And I mean, first of all, like, the nurse was like amazingly dressed, and then she's got like the schlumpy husband, which of course always cracks me up. Then they get in their like Prius or whatever and go. And you're just kind of like, and it sort of strikes you again as like the entire neighborhood is Caucasian, which, by the way, like Hollywood, we really need to catch up a little bit with, racial integration in these movies. But it was almost sort of that clarifying moment where then you had, the African-American boy, and you're like, oh, because those were his parents. So he's the next house over. Again, it shouldn't have to be that way, but, they're kind of showing you that progression of house number 1, house number 2, and then he literally just happened to go to house number 3 where, the granddaughter's girlfriend was at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Vicky was probably my favorite character in the movie. I felt like out of all the protagonists, Laurie Strode included, she actually had the most character of everybody. I really didn't care much about the granddaughter. The daughter, I didn't really care about her all that much. Even Laurie Strode, she's a damaged person, right? I mean, she almost is just as single-minded as Michael Myers is at this point. So really, Vicky, out of all the characters, kind of had the most well-rounded life, I guess. How'd you guys feel about that?
I agree. I really liked the interaction with the boy that she was babysitting.
Yep.
I thought that it was fun. It gave some humor to the whole movie. They had a lot of jokes going back and forth. The little boy had some language, which was funny. He was really cute. I really enjoyed his character as well as Vicky.
Yeah, it's still making me laugh thinking about that scene where, like, man, girl, you used to be cool. We used to hang out together. We used to do stuff. Now you're my least favorite babysitter. And you're just like, oh, like, oh. And then, of course, later he comes back around just kidding. You're still my favorite, which was just so endearing and sweet. So I just thought the whole setup of that house, again, the whole sort of like it was through the film sort of visually trapped in that house. And then, her boyfriend comes over and, he just wants to smoke a doobie and hang out type of thing.
Oh, they were going to have what on the over the clothes sex or something?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Which also I was like, oh, good for you, Vicky. Like we're not being sexually promiscuous. Maybe you won't be killed.
What did she say? She didn't say dry hump. Didn't she say like dry fuck? Isn't that what she said?
Yeah.
All right. So this movie. Okay. I'm probably gonna get beat. I'm gonna get beat up for this, but okay. So this movie portrays millennials or whatever the generation is after millennials, because I don't think that. Yeah, sure, Gen Z, lame compared to 78. Like, I don't know. I just, you know what I mean? Like
they're not sexually promiscuous.
Well, you know what I mean.
They're still doing drugs, man.
I don't know.
They're still doing the doobies, the wacky tobacco.
I guess. I just felt like they were way more lame than the kids in 78.
Well, I did feel like a little bit like, well, if you're not actually getting it on, then you don't deserve to get murdered. That wasn't fair.
Right. And she was fun.
Yeah. Poor Vicky.
She was cool, but I'm just thinking...
But you also have to think we didn't have to, not that I was not born in 78, but people didn't have to worry about STDs like they do today. So maybe she was taught to like, hey, you might want to hold off on this because who knows what you're going to get.
I still feel like just one more reason why she shouldn't get murdered. Like, bring back Vicky. Let's give her a sequel and she can go back and, like, kick Michael in the balls or something.
Agreed.
Yeah, I was sad that she died. Although I will say that whole scene was very good. I mean, the whole setup and the boy being in the room and Michael being in the closet and the whole thing. Like, all that was freaking me out. Like, I enjoyed that.
That still made me jump in the trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
scary.
Because you're like, oh, please don't open that door.
And like, the stupid, like, I can't close the door because like his foot's in the jam or something stupid. But it's just how they shoot it that, again, you're seeing enough of the closet that it genuinely looks like he's not in there. And then she opens it and he's, almost supernaturally imposed. I don't know if he was actually there the whole time for that shoot or if they do put him there through CGI. I don't know. But holy cow. Yeah, he just like pops out of nowhere type of thing.
Yeah, and then you have the callback a little bit later, of course, when I think it's Detective Hawkins goes in, or Deputy Hawkins goes in and sees the boyfriend pinned to the wall. He got the same treatment as the other boyfriend from the first movie. Yeah,
the boyfriend's bited both in the same way. That's why you guys have to watch the first one before you go and see this. It's so cool how he's sort of. He's the same guy. Right. Is what you're seeing.
And
he
covered her with the sheet, like he covered himself when he was playing Bob, I believe.
I didn't think of it that way. Yeah. If you put glasses on her, I would have gotten it. You should have put sunglasses. A little too comical.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the granddaughter Allison, because she starts to have a more prominent role here in the movie as it goes on. So she has a boyfriend. Cameron, apparently, who
of course his name's Cameron.
Yeah,
by the way.
Yes, obviously, I know. and Cameron has a best friend, Oscar, who looks really like the
a Muppet.
No. I was gonna say
of course his name's Oscar.
Well, the actor from Daredevil who plays Foggy
from
Daredevil,
gosh,
he looks just like him. It freaked me out. I thought it was the actual actor.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say the kid with curly hair in Stranger Things.
But he looks similar to him too, actually.
Yeah.
Some combination of him and Foggy. Like if him and Foggy had like some child through time travel, it would be this guy, Oscar.
Two men having a child through time travel. That's an interesting proposal.
Preternatural.
Well, yes. If you can have kids through time travel, then it could be two guys, I guess. It can happen.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So anyway, he has best friend Oscar, and Cameron is... he's a dick, I guess, right? He comes from a bad
yes and no
family.
Making poor decisions.
I don't know. I kind of want to like know more about Cameron. You know, he was one of those characters where, again, they set up this whole idea that his entire family is dysfunctional. They're all losers. They have issues. You know, they have been incarcerated. Da da da. You know, and the granddaughter is saying, you know, no, like this guy's really good. Like he's a good guy. And then I feel like, first of all, also they go to like that school Halloween party or whatever. I don't know. Yeah. How like school parties have gotten cooler than like even, you know, paid for raves these days. But man, that was one awesome epic party. Like, I don't know, like as, is that inappropriate as like a 37-year-old to want to go and like crash high school parties?
Apparently we call them bangers now.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought.
But not mash and bangers.
Bangers and mash, yeah.
Yeah, no, and I was thinking that meant orgy, but I was explained at
No,
work that
that's-
the banger is just a really awesome party.
Like headbanger?
I'm not quite sure where it came from.
Oh my God, we're so old.
I know.
No, I did. See, you have to go back to the 70s to have orgies. Now you just have prearranged corporate raves in high school. See, that's how they get you from sleeping with each
bangers.
other. Or
Don't
bangers.
forget
I'm
the
sorry.
bangers.
Where
rave
did
is from my-
corporate come into this?
Oh, it's a lot of money went into that.
Yeah.
Somebody set it up and bought all that stuff and got it all together. It wasn't.
Clearly the PTA.
Well, I'm sure it was tax money and everything else. I'm sure.
Also, like slightly spiked cider. I have to say, I feel like it's almost a commentary on today's society that they tried not to go so over the top with the drug scene. Maybe not to like overly incentivize or imply or reinforce that, which in some ways I appreciated. It like in to your point, Ray, like it really kind of whitewashed it in many ways that they weren't as intense as the 70s. But I don't really want to see teenagers shooting up heroin into their veins in a modern day. You know,
Well, you didn't see that in the originals. You just saw them smoking joints and having fun.
That would be a more realistic modern day envisioning of the promiscuity, the extensiveness of that in the 70s. Would you not agree?
I don't know that I agree with that, but I will say that I guess here's my problem with the whole thing. You're going to up the violence where he's killing, you know, a 12-year-old boy or whatever the boy was by like strangling him in camera, right? But you're not. But boobs? Oh God forbid we see boobs, right? Like we can see
We
that.
saw Judith's boobs
We can
again.
see her boobs again. Or like, you know, kids wanting to get it on or any, like none of that. We got to draw back on all that. But the violence, man, we'll just go balls to the wall on the violence. And like,
There's
go ahead.
a
I'm
fun
sorry, Helen,
fact
go ahead.
about Judith Myers, by the way. I thought you would like this.
Give
You know,
give it to me.
given the boobs.
Side boob girl?
That
to me.
Her name is she was an actress, Sandy Johnson, and she was Playmate in June 1974 issue of Playboy.
Oh, and her name's Sandy.
Yes.
Oh.
Sandy Johnson.
Oh, Lord.
Yep.
Answers all my questions from the first movie.
Done and
I thought
done.
you might like that little bit of research I did for you.
Okay.
Helen to the rescue with the research. Love it.
Found out the source of the boobs.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, yeah.
All right. Let's.
Centerfold, you're hired.
All right, so let's move on to the next section. Allison encounters Michael shortly after he kills Oscar. She is rescued by Hawkins and Sartain, who is now working with the local police after locating Michael. Hawkins impacts him with his vehicle. Sartain, obsessed with Michael's enigmatic motivations, kills Hawkins before he can kill Michael and abducts Allison. Sartain reveals that he arranged for Michael's escape to reinforce his perceived role as an apex predator who needs to finish what he started and kill Laurie to reassert himself. Michael soon regains consciousness and kills Sartain and two police officers while Allison flees into the woods. So, before you guys weigh in, a continuation of the Oscar, Cameron, Allison sort of love triangle thing. Because this is my big thing with the movie, I guess, is that Oscar dies, right? He's the friend zone best friend beta, if you will, to use some of the terms, who, you know, misinterprets her
No, there's no
advances.
misinterpretation. There are no advances. There are no signals. Let's just be clear.
No, but
he's making them up.
Well, I don't say he's making them
He's
up.
taking advantage of the situation.
Well, see, here we go. See, I don't think he is. And he leans in to kiss her, and then she says no, and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry."
I mean,
That's
she
it.
just had an issue with her boyfriend. You don't just go
Well,
randomly
but
try to
so,
kiss a
So
girl.
he's drunk as well. But here's the point.
Yeah, jerk.
Cameron, who's kissing other girls. Now, granted, she kissed him, but he lied about it. He just didn't say, "Well, this chick kissed me," and like I can't,
Tiger
whatever.
boob lady.
Right?
I just couldn't handle myself.
Yeah, whatever. And
Classic.
is drunk, right? And takes her phone and throws it in pudding. I guess
was
I don't know
wondering what that
exactly
was.
what that was. We'll go with pudding.
And it just slowly sinks,
Yeah, it
and I'm like,
sinks in there.
grab the phone.
And I'm thinking there's not that much wrong with it. I don't.
You're waiting for the blub.
Yeah, exactly. So he does all that, and he lives. He lives through the movie fine. But poor Oscar, nope. He gets slaughtered.
I mean, I wouldn't mind if the boyfriend had died. I feel like he could have gone. It wouldn't have mattered to me.
Yeah, I thought it was a commentary on the sort of Me Too, not Me Too directly, but that sort of idea where you have these guys that are, the betas who, what do they call them? Incels? Is that what they call themselves?
I don't know what the heck you're talking about.
don't know. what he's talking about
they're
either.
like
Incels.
they're involuntarily celibate, which is what it stands for, where they can't get laid, is what I'm trying to say.
What is the matter with you?
Well, it's not the matter with me. I can get laid. I'm just talking about these other guys. But
Okay, first of all, I would have loved that if that was a Me Too statement. I think that would have been awesome. Also, but to your point, like, it wasn't a Me Too statement because he's not an alpha male jerk asshole. He just kind of stumbles into the situation where he accidentally is drunk and is like, I'm kind of obsessed with you, and like, let me get you a little smooch. But I also want to say that scene where he's murdered with the motion sensor light was awesome.
That was really, really
yeah,
awesome.
that was cool. That was
Horrible,
cool.
but awesome.
Yeah. No, it was
Also,
cool.
the poor kid is like sitting in the backyard. Hey, Mr. Miller, or whatever his name was. I'm sorry, man. I just tried to kiss this girl. She didn't want me. And then the lights go out, then they go back on. Hey, man, you're being kind of sketchy. I mean, the whole thing. And then to have him basically impaled on that fence. Again, I would say that's the third, like, gruesome murder throughout the movie.
I think Allison should blame herself.
It's pretty horrible. I'm not going to lie.
She should blame herself.
She should blame herself for his death.
Oh, stop it.
She
I
should.
mean, she was allowed to
Stop
be
it.
aggravated over the unwanted advance.
Completely.
No, I'm not saying she could
So
be
she
aggravated.
left the
That could be
place
fine.
and then-
But she's also the sober one in this whole
No, she
situation
did try to
between
go
the
back.
three of these.
But he was already dead.
That's when he was screaming, dying, being
Because she
impaled.
thought he was messing. He was obviously a jokester.
Yeah.
I guess.
Don't blame her. Blame the Krispy Kremes. He could have lost another 20 pounds and made it over that fence.
Oh, you
no
gonna
problem.
you gonna fat shame it? You gonna
I'm
fat shame this guy?
I'm
Miss Me Too over there is gonna fat shame this man. All right, I'm on Team Oscar. Team Oscar
You
on this
should
thing.
know what's achievable.
I don't want to bring back. I don't want to bring back Vic. I don't want to bring.
I'm saying I like Oscar.
I am not- I don't wanna
I'm saying
bring-
you shouldn't be shaming that girl for trying to like get away from a physically confrontational situation where she's forcibly trying to be molested and she's trying to leave this situation and you're blaming her for him getting killed.
Forcibly
No.
molested. He leaned in, kissed. She said, "That was wrong," and he was like, "Whoa, I'm sorry. Like he didn't
I
say,
think
"All right,
she
let's
was
get it on."
disgusted with the situation because she knew he was drunk, and he was
Oh,
only
yeah.
making the
Oh, yeah,
advance
I mean-
because of that.
oh, I
So
mean,
I
he-
think she left because
I
of
mean,
that.
he totally was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he totally messed up that whole thing. I'm just saying the man didn't deserve to die. That's all I'm saying.
Well, then stop blaming the chick.
I think she should feel responsible. It's okay. It's
Well,
okay.
I don't think
So-
she should, but I'm sure she does.
Yeah. Well, after this, I don't know what
Welcome
she feels
to
after all this, but
Female Psychology
Yeah.
101.
so you have Michael Myers. Now, I have a question about this. How did Michael Myers come after them? Is it random? Did he just randomly find them, or is there something that gets him on their trail? Because he murders Vicky in the house, right, and the boyfriend, and then Laurie is there and she shoots him as he's like getting away, right? Shoots him in his shoulder or something like that. He disappears. So he's just like randomly in the town now, I don't know, walking around, and he happens to stumble upon them.
I feel like that's probably accurate.
Yeah, that actually really
Yeah.
ticked me off because it was kind of like the first one where our good doctor turned around and the car's just,
Yeah.
looky there.
Yeah.
30 feet away, the vehicle in which this psycho murderer has been driving for the last 2 days. Same thing, just a convenience mechanism, so I didn't love that.
Yeah, and I thought this movie was trying to have it every way they wanted it with Michael Myers' motivations. I don't think they knew what his motivation was, quote unquote. They just wanted to throw a bunch of stuff in there so that it was ambiguous as to what it was. Like, he kills people, he kills women because they're women, or maybe he doesn't. He doesn't kill babies, but maybe he would. I don't know. And then, but he kills kids. And then he's back in Haddonfield for Laurie. maybe, but it seems like he's just randomly killing.
He kills with knives, but sometimes
hammers, right? Yeah, I don't know. You know what I mean? Who is this man?
Yeah,
you know
you
what I mean?
got to think like he's been sitting in this asylum for 40 years. Like the rage has to be building because like that girl got away. I feel like his mission was going after Laurie.
So he randomly runs into her granddaughter.
Yeah,
Nah.
Like,
it's
I'm not even-
Haddonfield can't be that big.
I'm not even entirely sure he even knew what house he was in at the end of the movie.
I'm pretty sure he didn't. But what I think bothered me the most was the scene after where I think she's trying to they're trying to get her to the Laurie Strode's house, the grandmother's house.
Yes.
So she's in the back of the cop car. The doctor is in the front seat with the police officer.
Dr. Satan. Yes.
And then just keep a lookout for Michael Myers. Oh, he's over there. Let's run him over. Done. I'm like, that's also a thing of convenience, in my opinion. He just happened to be there and they just happened to run over. But the scene afterwards with the mask was where the doctor puts it on was pretty cool, and I thought there would be a twist. There was no twist.
Yeah, I for that one brief moment, I was like, did they really just kill Michael Myers and he just became like the new Michael Myers by putting the mask on? They had me for a brief second.
I actually thought from the very get-go of the movie, when they were dangling the mask, I actually thought they were foreshadowing, even
True.
at that moment, that sort of, horrible to say, but the magic was in the mask type of thing.
Right.
Not to say that it was, and I know, Ray, you always make fun of me for saying, like, everything's possession.
Yes, the mask possessed him.
Not to say that it was possession, but just sort of that, the mask would sort of like be passed on. Like it was
the totem. It's the totem.
Yeah, and not that there was anything mystical about it, just that it was the thing, right? That would sort of be passed on like generation that would terrorize, horny teenagers for decades to come. So yeah, I mean, actually, when they ran him over and like kind of sort of really killed him, I was like, wait, what?
Right.
What's
And how
happening?
did the doctor know then that the only way that he's going to die is if Laurie Strode dies, and then all of a sudden you hear his heart beating or his breathing? I can't even remember.
I assumed that the doctor was lying, right? He walks up there and he's not really dead. He knows he's alive. He doesn't want the sheriff to kill him, and so he's just lying that he killed him or whatever.
Oh, I don't know. I guess
That was my interpretation. Once I knew he got the old pen knife out and stabbed him.
whatever. That whole scene was like predictable and disappointing. That's all I have to say.
Yes, yeah. So they get him in the car, right? And evil. Sorry, go ahead.
In the police car, like that was terrifying. That was
Yes.
terrifying. So the granddaughter's in the back, locked in, what we now know, you can't get out of the backseat of a cop car, and you've got the, the fence, the window in between the two. She can't go anywhere. And they put him in there without the mask on, unconscious, laying on her. And you're just like, oh my God. Like, could that be more
Right.
terrifying? So I thought that was genuinely scary. I thought I like that.
I agreed.
Yeah. So Dr. Evil drives him to Laurie's house.
Like, yeah, right outside, because there's another cop car there.
Yeah, there's
who's
another cop car
protecting,
there, yeah.
And they're quite a distance away, so they can see
Yep.
that they pull up, and then they're kind of trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and then Michael wakes up and kicks the door, or kicks the
Screen.
seat. He kicks the seat, the entire seat forward.
Yeah. smashes
And
his
then
head.
gets out. Yeah, and then the ultimate gory kill is the smashing of the doctor's
Oh,
head
well, he drags him out and boot to head.
Yeah, so I mean.
He says,
yeah.
say something. I
Yes.
was really thinking he was
Oh.
going to say something, and he never said a word.
So two things. One of the things that kind of annoyed me throughout this movie as a theme was the idea of the obsession of Michael Myers speaking. I didn't care. I didn't care from the first one. It wasn't enough of a gimmick for me to think, oh, he doesn't speak. He's been mute. In the beginning of this, they say, oh, he can speak. He just chooses not to. So you assume he has spoken. I feel like they say that sort of at some point.
I didn't assume. I assumed the opposite. He does not speak, although he can.
I just felt like maybe it was the inflection or the way that they spoke about it really just kind of, made me go like, okay, fine. Like, don't expect him to speak. But then, I felt like, again, thematically throughout the movie, they were trying to build this whole, just get him to talk type of, what's that called? Like when you sort of have just like the overarching, just reoccurring anyways, just like, like a big theme throughout this to the next one to whatever the next one's going to be. Like now it's like this obsession. Instead of now being obsessed with female figures who are promiscuous, now we're obsessed that he can't speak.
Well, I think, once again, the evil doctor is a stand-in for, in some ways, the audience's obsession with what's Michael Myers actually doing. Right? What's his motivation? And the speaking is, if he would say something, he would tell us. Is it his sister's name? Is it his sister's name? Like, what's the point of all of this? And, of course, the doctor dies for that. And I guess the warning is, you're never going to know, and the audience can't know.
It's so stupid. We already know it's Judith Myers. Get over yourselves. Plus, if he says one word, it's not going to be helpful. You have to have a conversation with the guy. But I also just want to say, as a really quick aside, as we talk about this crazy doctor, I just realized he's incredibly like Dr. Poopy Pants from Captain Underpants.
Professor Poopy Pants, yeah.
That's right. Professor Poopy Pants.
Yes.
So he met his end.
Yes, it was a gross one, too, because he gets boot stomped and pretty gross.
With the brains oozing out.
Right. I saw, I guess they do it in American History X where they...
Yeah, curb stomp the guy, yeah.
And I was like, I never wanted to see it again, and then I saw it again.
Yeah. So once again, I'm going to go back to does Michael Myers even know where he is? Right? Like, he doesn't go after the girl at first. He goes after the doctor. I think because he doesn't want the help.
You never really see him go after the granddaughter, though, right?
He follows her through the woods.
Her, but I don't think he actually is, if he wanted to kill her, he'd kill her.
Look, honestly, I think he's going to the house for help. He's lost in the woods.
No,
he doesn't know where he's at.
Stop it.
Can I use your phone?
Yeah, can I use your phone? And the husband comes out with a gun. What's he supposed to do?
That's what he's going to say.
You know what I'm saying?
Can I use your phone?
It was self-defense. He didn't know it was Laurie Strode's house.
I need to call the police.
And I'm just really confused by that because I'm not even sure he even knows where she is, that she's there or anything.
And at least he'd be able to use that phone because it was a rotary phone.
Yeah, see?
Okay, right. Yeah, amen, sister. Amen. I love the rotary throwback. Okay, so this is where the movie all started to fall apart for me. Let me just say, Giant, I love this movie. I enjoyed it. I would totally watch it again. I go to the theater to watch again. But again, this is where we had another convenience mechanism. So, right, the idea that he stumbled upon the granddaughter in the backyard. Then we have this whole scene with the doctors and da-da-da-da. Okay, great. Net neutral. Now he's going after the granddaughter again. She stumbles through the woods. It's apparently the back of this residential neighborhood, right up to her recluse grandmother's house.
So,
really bothered me.
So I assumed that she knew where to go, partially because the floodlights come on at some point. Like I assumed she saw the floodlights, and that's how I rationalized it.
You would have to assume that at the end of the day, she knows where her grandmother's lives, that they've had contact, that they're friendly with one another. So one would have to assume she kind of knew where she was going. But it just felt like the way that it was portrayed was literally she was just trying to run away.
Oh, yeah, she was in the woods. She doesn't know where she was.
Yeah, doe in the woods, and happened to stumble upon her grandmother's well-armored house.
Right,
yeah, well, I'm sorry, go ahead, Helen.
Like when you first see the podcasters at the beginning of the movie traveling to the house, you feel like it's incredibly isolated. Mm-hmm. And then in this scene, it's not a very far drive, and she's just walks through a few woods and then she's there.
Well, she first goes to the range. I mean, she stumbles upon the range, right, where she's shooting. And I don't know how far that away from the house that is supposed to be, but I felt like she stumbled upon that, and then she saw the floodlights in the house kind of led her to the house. But can we move on? Because that's actually getting into the next section. So, okay. Michael arrives at Laurie's fortified house and kills Ray. Karen escapes to an underground basement, and Laurie goes on the offensive. Michael breaks into the house and eludes Laurie. Allison stumbles inside and enters the basement, where she is reunited with her mother. Although Michael finds them, Laurie and Karen ambush him, trap him inside the basement, and set the house ablaze. Laurie, Karen, and Allison embrace, escaping by hitching a ride in the back of a pickup truck. A final shot of the burning basement is shown, with Michael nowhere to be seen. In a post-credits scene, Michael's breathing is heard, indicating that he may have survived.
So this is where the stupid begins for me.
Yep.
So I still love the movie, and I wouldn't be against them going back and honestly just reshooting, like, all of this. But, right, again, she kind of casually stumbles up to the house. Also, they've done this elaborate setup to explain the grandmother, Laurie Strode, with PTSD, why she's been traumatized, why the daughter's been traumatized, how she's created this protective insulation for her granddaughter, why she's estranged for her mother, why the mother's a recluse. I mean, the data points just line up. Finally, Michael Myers is on a rampage. You're like, thank God for the grandmother. Go to her house, well armored. Presumably they go over the plan type of thing. They, show this amazing moving kitchen island that they can go into the secret passageway in the basement. Super cool. And then it's like, they're hanging out. Like, they should have just been, like, making some s'mores or something. Drinking some hot toddies. Like, hanging out. And then it's like, something happens. Oh, the cop car is out in the front.
Yeah, he kills the cops and he...
Right.
He cop car up,
So the dad sees, the police lights and is like, oh, let me go out and check it out.
With
and
his
he goes...
tiny little gun.
And he
Don't forget
goes-
that tiny little gun.
He's never fired. He's not done any of this training, right? They give him like a hand revolver. But like, what kind of idiot is like, oh, let me just wander on out here. I know there's a mass murder out here. Maybe, again, he's still in this state of disbelief. But you would think at this point they understand that there is a mass murderer on the loose. He's brutally murdered multiple people. We are now in lockdown mode. And let me wander out there. I don't see anybody in the cop car. But like, hey guys, what's... And then, of course, he's killed. And I don't feel an ounce of, regret or remorse or empathy for that guy. Because you're just like, dude, come on.
Yeah, this part falls down for me in some ways because... And this is an original... I don't say an original sin of the movie, but... In 78, when Laurie's just a high school girl and all this stuff happens, you forgive a lot. Like, she doesn't know what's going on. Nobody knows what's going on. Now she's had 40 years to figure out what to do with this guy. And what does she do? Turn every light in the house off. Let's turn all the lights off. Outside, floodlights. Light everywhere. Inside, nope, gotta be dark. Shadows everywhere. So, and also, like you said, like, police cars, like, no, like, don't open the door. The door's locked, can't be opened. Something like, don't go outside. Like, nothing. It's just...
I forgot to say, how did the police car even get through her gate?
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, wasn't there a gate?
Cameras everywhere. Yeah, because the podcasters come up to the gate and they can't get through the gate. But mysteriously, said police car makes it easily through the gate.
Helen's giving us dirty looks. Go ahead, Helen.
I'm not giving you dirty looks. I agree with it. I felt like the house was poorly designed for somebody who's trying to protect themselves from somebody who's really good at hiding.
Yeah, you mean like mannequin room?
Mannequin room was...
Yeah, mannequin room's a problem.
There's a lot of times...
Why? Why?
No, wait. What would have been better is if they all had Michael Myers masks on.
Yes. And jumpsuits.
And jumpsuits.
Which, funny enough, you could actually realistically
yes,
see
understand.
her doing
Absolutely.
something like that. That actually would have been better than this stupid room filled with naked mannequins, which, I can't see on Michael Myers like a big, bulky human being in a mask amongst these white mannequins. But exactly, you show them go to this breaker box and kind of like set up the whole house, and they're turning on all the floodlights, and you're going, yes. And then, exactly, they cut to this scene where, wait, but they turn off all the lights on the inside of the house. So, in certainly one mechanism, we know you can't really see in the house when all the lights are on outside the house. And that's cool as long as the predator is on the outside of the house. And then you can run around and do your thing. But as soon as he's inside the house, come on, you've got to be kidding me. I love the security mechanisms that she had with the rooms where she could scan the room and then hit that emergency button. And then the mechanical door would come down and lock down the room. That I loved. I thought that was super smart. Mm-hmm. Clearly a custom installation.
Yeah, I thought she should have just locked all the rooms down. And whatever one he was in, he'd be stuck in.
Right.
And if he wasn't in a room, he'd be in the hallway and she could shoot him. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is she has an entire armory. And she arms herself with one really bulky gun and, like, I guess a knife.
Right.
Like, she'd have been strapped like Rambo. I mean, she'd have had guns all over the
Grenades,
place.
all of
She'd
it.
have had, like,
that made me so
brass
mad.
knuckles.
Yeah, she had all these weapons, and then the dad gets a stupid 6-piece revolver.
That's because it says he doesn't know how to use a weapon. That's why.
Who cares? Give the guy a freaking AK-40. I don't care.
I would have shot that thing like no tomorrow all through the house. Yep.
I mean, you would have had like literally at least the 60-second overview of like, we're going to give you a quick training. I've got a million dummies in the backyard.
Yeah. Or upstairs in this this room here.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, well, you don't have to go outside.
We could do some test shots. No problem. And then, of course, her daughter has no weapon the entire time. I just want to smack, and you're just like, this girl that's been trained her entire life is wandering around, like, again, the doe in the woods.
Well, I felt like that was her, like, conscientious objector. She was like, I don't want to give in to this, what I've been trying to be against my entire life.
She needs to get over herself. We know
well,
he's
she did
right
at the
there.
end. She did at the end.
But also, didn't, like, the mom give her a gun or something?
Yes,
and then
was a
she
gun at one point.
appeared with no gun.
Well,
I was
I
like,
mean, yeah,
what
I
did
think
you
she-
do with the gun? Like, if they had this scene where they had showed her being like, I'm not going to resort to this, which also would have been stupid.
Right.
But at least there was some clarity of her
it was unclear.
morality.
We were taking notes during the movie, and I literally had 4 times pick up the gun. Why aren't you picking up the gun? I don't understand why there's so many guns. Why are you not touching the guns?
Okay, and then I will also say, of course, the big thing that I had an issue with is that then they go into the basement, which is there's no tunnel, there's no escape mechanism. You're going down to a death box, and you're like, let's just hide down here. Like, they had their room shut down, to your point, Ray. But, you know, the idea is that we want to kill Michael Myers, right? We want to kill Michael Myers. That's the whole point of this thing. So I just felt like they were going about it sort of all the wrong ways. I will say, you know, just to kind of fast forward things a little bit, the whole point is that they get him into the basement and they trap him, and then they set the house on fire and it collapses on him, et cetera, et cetera. And you're like, cool, but if you had just shot him in the head a few times, just saying, that might have been a little bit more effective.
Yeah, I just to back it up, the one scene I did like, not the one scene I did like, but one scene I did like, is when, and this is a little stupid, like she goes to the front door, right? But his hands come through and grab her and just start smashing her head against the door. And I was like, oh man, is she gonna make it out of this movie? I thought she might die right there, and it might just be the daughter and the granddaughter. And then she just blows his hand off, which.
At least she got that. To me, that so annoyed me too, because again, you're just like, you're in lockdown mode and you have a like stained glass front door. First of all, if you're that paranoid, you're not having glass inlaid front doors. That's just stupid. And second of all, this again gets back to survival skills and mechanisms. And we talked about this with, what was it? It was Annabelle, where the mom, you know, the husband goes next door and then the mom has to call 911. She's got her back to the room. You're like, no, you idiot. Like, you're going to put your back to the wall at the very least. It's the exact same scenario here. Oh, let me, like, lean up against the door with the 2 glass panels on it. No, you're not going to do that. The woman has been training for, what did you say, 40 years, Ray?
40 years.
For 40 years in, like, you know, armed skills, self-defense, fortifying this house. And you're going to lean up against the door with 2 stained glass. It just,
I
so
also
annoyed me.
enjoyed the how many accordion door closets did she have?
Yeah,
that was the best. That would talk about throwback. The stupid accordion doors, the exact same closets. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing was interesting is after she gets manhandled there at the door, she goes back down into the basement, talks to her daughter for like 3 scenes. Michael Myers like stomps around. I think she shoots up through the floor, which he should have been like, okay, they're in the basement.
Right.
But then he disappears. I guess he's going and getting the husband and taking him upstairs and stuffing him in the closet, because that's where she finds him, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's setting his trap.
But then she doesn't stay down there. She like stays down there, says something to her daughter, and then goes back. I have to finish this or whatever, and goes back up. And I'm like, wasn't like ultimately the plan's to get him back down into the basement? It just seemed weird to me that she went down and up. That basement mechanism opens and closes like 24 times within the movie, and I thought that was way too much.
Mm-hmm. You should either stay down there or maybe peeked out a little bit, but not 12 times.
So
or something.
I did feel like this movie was one of those where we get you to that final aha scene. You know, it's not a prison, it's a trap or whatever. And so the whole point is that they're supposed to have been doing kind of all these stupid things in order to lure him down there. And now they all suddenly make sense. I like that idea. I always think that's so smart if you have a quick little twist at the end and you're like, oh man, all the things I thought they were doing wrong, they were actually doing right. I love that. But in this case, I didn't actually think it really delivered on that.
Right. I agree.
There were still a lot of stupid things that were going on. And then they have like the weird blade trap door that comes across and they throw the flare down there. And then I was also just so irritated that they had all these little, gas outlets and it sets it on fire. And it's not actually setting Michael Myers on fire. We don't douse him in gasoline or anything like that. We're just, illuminating the entire, like the walls surrounding. So he can basically like run around like a panicked clown and get out.
But see, now it makes sense to me.
Why?
That's why he gets the overalls. They're fire retardant.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it's about.
Are they?
I don't know, but
they right?
I don't know, but let's go with that, right? Now the mask would melt right to his face with a little bit of heat, but
And you would assume there's oil on the overall, so in fact he would probably be more flammable.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean the whole idea of burning. First of all, when the gas pilots go on, I'm like, is the house going to blow up? Are they all going to die? Is this like
Yeah,
a
'cause they
suicide
were all
pact?
still standing
and
in
like
there.
inside the basement, outside the basement, the whole thing. I'm like, they're all going to die, right? Yeah, no, they're just going to not watch him burn. They're going to watch everything burn around him. And then, once again, not shooting him in the head, not, unloading on him with whatever ammo they have left and throwing the knife at him, whatever. No, we're just going to watch him a little bit, then we're going to leave. Assume he dies. Assume it all goes to plan,
And
as
then-
Dr. Evil would say.
Right. I'm just going to assume the sharks with the lasers on the head are going to take care of him. And I love that the daughter got a piece of him. I thought that was awesome, that she shot him, that she played the victim. Mommy, I can't do
Oh, I did like that
this."
too,
And he
yeah.
sat down and she's like, gotcha, bitch, basically.
Yeah.
I thought that was awesome, but also the idea that exactly right there, like just stand there, you're holding the gun, just shoot him in the head while you're waiting there, and then let his body burn. So, of course, inevitably, as we hear the breathing at the end, we're leaving it open for yet another sequel.
Yes.
I guess that's the point.
Yeah, so, Halloween H2O or whatever, or Halloween Resurrection did the same thing, right? It was 20 years later and, Laurie Strode. But in that movie, she had sort of moved on. And so when he comes after her again, it's a little more believable that she isn't prepared for him.
Right.
Like in this one, it invites so much analysis, right? When you figure she has 40 years. I think that's the ultimate problem with the third act of the movie.
Yep, it gets your expectations up really high and delivers mediocre.
What did you think about the change in the style of the mask? I have a little fun fact on that one too.
There was a change? I don't know. I mean, I figured it's been 40 years, the mask's going to look different.
So apparently it's supposed to kind of look different how he moves, so it's not the same looking mask each time. However, the special effects guy did research how latex decomposes over 40 years, so it is legitimately supposed to look like that.
Oh, so just like a little like looser, kind of
Like
decomposed
the
more to your
bubbling,
point.
Yep.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting.
That is interesting.
I figured it was just still supposed to look like Shatner, but modern day. So it looked as rough as Shatner does these days. Sorry, it's a William Shatner mask, the original.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was interesting because actually we were talking about this at work today, and I actually had somebody else totally random cite that fact as well. They were like, "Oh, did you know that back in the day they didn't know? They just literally went to the store and bought. They said a Spock mask, a Captain Kirk mask, and I'm trying to remember what the third.
The third one was the clown mask
Right.
that they use in the
clown.
movie.
And the
I'm
clown.
not even sure I don't remember them saying there's a third one, but
Okay, yeah. And then they cut the eyes out of the Captain Kirk mask and made it up, and they decided to stick with that one. But I don't know, man. Spock is pretty creepy.
yeah, well, it would have looked a little more alien,
Yeah,
I think.
I don't know how I would feel about the ears. Like that probably would have turned me off.
Yeah.
Creepy possessed elf
Yes,
coming after
exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up, right? Okay. So now that we've reviewed the movie, it's time to rate it. Only the best movies make it to the top of the hill, and to be the best, they have to perform in 3 categories. First, technical composition, which represents how well the movie's made, including the script, directing, cinematography, acting, and effects. Second is impact, which represents how well the movie accomplished its emotional intent. Was it scary? Was it funny? Did it make you question mankind or the nature of your reality? And third is enjoyment, which is pretty simple. How much did you enjoy the movie? Would you see it again? Do you never want to see it again? So let's talk about the technical composition, and then we can give our ratings at the end of our conversation. So what did you think about the technical composition, Helen?
I had a lot of issues with the storyline that we have previously discussed. So I felt like they could have tied in together better, just how Anne had said about the inability for them them trying to get Michael Myers into the basement and not them just kind of coming up and down. That really bothered me. So I gave it a 6.
That's a really good point. I mean, like I said, I literally just started keeping a stupid list at the end of this movie. I think I got to 5 or 6 items just in the final scene. But overall, I thought that technically, when I'm thinking technically, I'm thinking maybe I side a little bit more towards the effects portion of the scale. And I thought that the general practical effects were good. I thought the costuming was good. I thought the scenery was good. The only effect that I thought looked cheap was the knife through the neck.
So did I.
I thought the dislocated jaw. I thought the impaled Oscar. I thought all that looked like really good. Really horrible, but really good. But the knife through neck looked fake to me. And you guys know I don't even typically go, oh, that CGI didn't look so good. I just go along with it. So tech, I gave it a 7.
I actually would rate it an 8. I was a little more forgiving on the plot side of things. I thought it was a well-made movie. It looks fantastic. They did a really good job of making Michael Myers pretty scary, I thought, in the parts where he's kind of killing people and moving through shadows and that sort of thing. And all horror movies suffer a little bit from the plot issue because they have to for it to kind of work. So yeah, an 8 for me. Oh, all right. So next is the impact. So what do you think, Anne?
So impact, overall, I didn't think this was super crazy scary. I didn't think, I wasn't hiding my eyes, as we'll get to in the next rating. I definitely found it generally enjoyable. But for an impact, certainly I wasn't, Ray, quote unquote, questioning my reality. So I gave it a 6.
I gave it a 7. I was not scared either. I would say I had, there were moments where there was high anxiety. I was not sure what was going to happen. I kept saying in my head, please pick up a gun. So I definitely, I felt like the original did a better job of the creepiness factor with the boogeyman type aspect, where you kind of look and you're like, oh, did I just see somebody? And then look again and say, oh, no, maybe I didn't. And in this one, I didn't think he really played that part.
I would agree with that. I gave this an 8 for an impact as well. So the movie's different, right? 2018 Halloween is much more about Michael Myers and Laurie Strode as characters and their play off of each other to some extent. I think they could have went into that more, but of course it's a slasher movie, so you can only do so much with the time you have. But I wasn't scared. I don't think I was scared, but I'm not sure that you were supposed to be scared in the same way as a demonic possession movie, or like The Ring or something like that. I felt that the impact there was more along the lines of him being this sort of unstoppable, ambiguous killing machine, and the sort of, I guess, dread that entails. And I thought they did a decent job of it. So 8. And finally, enjoyment. I'll get to you last, Helen, because I want to know. So, Anne, what did you think about the enjoyment?
Okay, so I enjoyed this movie, and maybe it was just the date night aura working its magic. I don't know, but I enjoyed this. I have to say, I've sort of said throughout this podcast, watching the first one and then watching the second one, seeing the very specific methodical mirroring of plot and effects and screenshots, I loved it. I love it when directors do that. I just think it's super clever. I think they've done their research. So I gave it a 9.
Okay, I gave it a 5.
Oh,
so,
Ray.
Yeah, so enjoyment, so the reason we have 3 scales is so we can differentiate things. And enjoyment is your own personal enjoyment of the movie. Slasher movies are not my favorite subgenre of horror. I thought they did a good job of this particular movie, but it also suffers from the not only being a slasher movie, but being a slasher movie 40 years later when the protagonist has a lot of time to figure out how to circumvent the fact that all you use is a knife as a weapon. So I liked it for what it was, but was not one of my favorites. So 5.
I gave it an 8. I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much as the original. I did like how they kind of went back to the original and had specific scenes so that they would tie in. I would definitely go back and watch it again, for sure. And I do think it might have played into the date night aspect of it, but it was entertaining. I thought it was entertaining.
All right, Anne, so why don't you calculate the scores and give us each our individual scores for the movie and then the overall score for Halloween 2018.
Absolutely. Okay, let's start with you, Ray. You rated this an 8.85 tech impact enjoyment, and your overall rating was a solid 7.
Nice.
Helen, you rated this a 6.78, meaning that your overall average for this was also a solid 7.
All right.
I actually rated this movie a 7.69, which actually gave it the highest rating as compared to you two. I give it a 7.3. Overall, the average for Halloween 2018 was a 7.1.
And that does not actually put it at the top of the hill. That would still be Annabelle at the top of the hill, but it does put it a whole point better than Halloween 1978, which is partially on my better scores for the movie, I think, than the 78 version. All right, so that about wraps it up. If you enjoyed this podcast, help us grow our audience, rate and review us on iTunes, and please share with your friends and family on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media platforms. I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Hilltop Horror Movie Reviews. I'm your host, Ray Richards, and on behalf of my co-host, I hope you'll join us next time when we review 2001's 13 Ghosts.